Hey everybody, this is John Finn, churchwithoutwallsinternational.org, and I want to share with you how we got started, because a lot of times people will see my my Facebook videos, or they'll see YouTube videos, or maybe they'll go to our website and they'll see some of the question and answer videos we have on there, or read some of the articles, but they sometimes skip over or they don't get how we actually started. So I want to share very briefly how Church Without Walls International got started. And here's the basics of it. For the first 25 years of my Christian walk, I was in the traditional church. Everything from a pastor of a small country church to an associate pastor traveling in ministry, all the way to a leader and what would be classified as an elder in a large megachurch of over 10,000 people, director of a Bible school. I was also director of Canada for another ministry. And so I traveled all over North America. So everywhere I would go, they would ask me the same three questions. How do I grow my church? How do I pay for my church? How do I shut the back door? That is, to stop people from leaving my church. And traveling all around, I began seeking the Lord, saying, it's all the same. They say that this church is different, but it's basically all the same. And I began seeking the Lord, about where He was moving, what He was doing. And in February of 2001, I was ministering in a church in Mississauga, Ontario, which is outside of Toronto, Canada. And during the worship service, my eyes were open to the natural, but suddenly my eyes were also open to the spirit realm. And I suddenly saw the Lord a few feet away, and He came walking to me. And He said this, "See what I see. People running to and fro to this meeting and that, looking for the spectacular, thinking that is supernatural, while they miss the supernatural work in their midst and even in their own hearts, for the process of discipleship is supernatural." And then He said, "As it was in the beginning, so it must be now. I'm moving in relationships." Now, as I said, that was February of 2001, and that set me on a search, because I did see people running to and fro looking for the spectacular, and they were missing the supernatural work of Christ in them, the hope of glory, that how He was trying to grow them up in Him. And they were taking opportunities to grow, and they were tossing it aside in favor of chasing the latest and the greatest and whatever the fad movement was, of who was doing the greatest things. And they were missing the discipleship process in their hearts. And so by about October of that year, I had researched. I'd found out that the church met in homes for the first 300 years until they became legalized in the 300s. And when Constantine legalized Christianity, he called people out of the homes. He kicked some of the pagan priests out of the pagan temples, realized that they were a same format that would be needed for having people be out of churches and into the auditorium setting. And that's where we have the pews, the pulpit, the platform, the whole bit came from the temples of Zeus and Apollo and everything. And church has been in the building ever since. But for the first 300 years, I learned, they met in homes. And it was astounding to me that at that point in my walk, I'd walked with the Lord 25 years. And I had always read the New Testament, not realizing, except maybe mentally agreeing as a historical footnote, that churches met in homes. But it was an amazing revelation to me to really realize that the apostles who wrote the New Testament were doing so as apostles who were establishing disciples in homes, and they were writing to people in house-based churches, home-based churches, family-based churches who meet in homes. And that was amazing to me that for 25 years I'd taken God's word out of context, because nobody likes to be taken out of context. And by October of that year, I told my wife, I said, I don't want to pastor a church again, but if I ever did, it would be in my living room, the way Paul did it. And 3 weeks later, November of 2001, I happened to be in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, Western Canada, and the Lord again, this time on a Sunday night service, appeared during the worship. The Lord appeared during the worship, and He came walking over to me, and the power was turned up, and I hit my knees because my strength had left me. And He came walking over to me and laid hands on me, and He said, "You've learned much from the people I've brought across your path in the last few months and the word that you've studied." He said, "I want you to start a house church and a house church network and structure it in such a way to facilitate the development of house churches around the world." He said, "You've been doing the work of an apostle, now I'm laying hands on you as an apostle for this task." And when I asked him if he had a name for it, I said, "What do you want it called?" And he said, "The Church Without Walls International." And then I said, "Why? Why do you want me to do this?" And he said, "It's against a time to come. It's a provision against a time to come. Be a resource for them, for it's against a time to come." And that's how we started. In January of 2002, my wife and I started in our living room. And same as in the New Testament, when you outgrow the living room, because you've been rotating homes and rotating who leads, everyone's used to leading, you outgrow a home, you just multiply out, and then those groups begin rotating among themselves, they multiply out, rotating among themselves, and now our network is around the world, not always multiplied directly from the same ones, but people who've been raised up to start house churches and then stay related to each other and related as part of a network. And that's what we're all about. That's how we got started. Healthy, balanced, a good balance of the Word and the Spirit in truth. Two scriptures that the Lord gave us right from the beginning. One is 2 Corinthians 1:24. It says, "Not that we would have dominion over your faith, but for we are helpers of your joy. For by your own faith you stand." Not that we'd have dominion over your faith. That's not what we're about. It's not centrally controlled or anything else. But by your own faith you stand. And then the second one, Galatians 2:9, where he said, "Peter, James, and John, who seemed to be pillars, perceived the grace in me and Barnabas." And they agreed that they would go to the Jews and we would go to the Gentiles. Perceiving the grace in one another is what it's all about. We can look past our backgrounds, our cultures, our nations even, our languages, and we perceive the grace of Christ in each other's hearts, and we're bonded together in that grace. And so that's how we got started. That's what we're all about. God bless you. churchwithoutwallsinternational.org. I hope you visit our website. And look for me also on Facebook and YouTube. There are a lot of videos on there for you. God bless. If it resonates with you, get in touch with us.